Welcome everyone to the Business Communications class. We are going to study the first chapter, that is, becoming a successful business communicator. So what exactly is communication? Communication is the process of planning, creating, delivering, and interpreting messages both verbally, perhaps through writing and speaking, and non-verbally, like through gestures and symbols. Why do we need communication? We need communication to persuade people, explain our decisions, solve the problems at hand, ensure that everyone shares the same understanding as us, and maintain productive working relationships. We are going to answer 3 questions today and learn from them. First, we need to know why we should study business communication, then we will know the challenges that we will face during business communication, and finally we will understand what characteristics do successful business communicators share. Let's start with why should we study business communication. Effective business communicators have a competitive edge in the job market. We see here that in general, Canadian CEOs prioritize people skills or relationship building, and even communication skills above skills that we think are more important, like analytical, leadership, and even problem-solving skills. In this figure 2, we can see that the skills most preferred by employers are verbal communication skills and teamwork skills. Surprisingly, we see here that oral communication skills rank second among the largest skill gaps. Effective business communication helps us become a more valuable employee as we get to use social media to improve employee satisfaction and build brand awareness. Communication skills will help us, and our employer, succeed. Employers may reward employees who communicate well with increased salary or make it easier for them to advance within the organization. Communication skills will help us enhance our personal business interactions, hence, improving them. So if business communication is so important, why is it so challenging? Basic communication, in itself, is a complex process. There are a lot of barriers between the sender and the receiver and vice versa. The concept of barriers helps explain why communication often fails. Barriers come in many forms. They may be physiological. For example, if you are speaking to someone who has hearing loss or a migraine headache, he may not be able to listen effectively and interpret what you are saying. Barriers may be psychological. If you compliment someone who does not respect you, she may interpret that compliment as a subtle criticism. Semantic barriers arise from language that is ambiguous or difficult to understand. If a colleague rushes late into a meeting and says to you, "I was held up at the train station," you might ask if the robber had a gun, when your colleague simply meant that the train was delayed. Language barriers arise from senders and receivers not using a shared language. Sometimes the problem is obvious. The sender speaks only Spanish and the receiver speaks only English. Sometimes the problem is less obvious. For example, employees who are new to a company or industry may not yet understand the jargon people use. These are called mixed messages barriers. Moreover, context adds to this complexity. Communication takes place in a specific context that influences purpose, medium choice, and interpretation. Some elements of context we can consider when communicating can be our audience's background and knowledge, our relationship with the audience, and other external influences that affect the audience. Remember always, to achieve our goal, we need to consider all these variables. Multiple audiences have different needs. They encode and decode messages differently. For example, an IT worker will speak and understand differently from an HR manager. When an IT worker may talk more using technical words, the HR manager might not understand exactly what he is trying to say, even though they want to achieve similar collective objectives. Different people have different contexts, backgrounds, concerns, and agendas. When an employee wants workspace development, it will mean different things when coming from a janitor and a sales executive. The janitor might be asking for a larger room for storing his supplies, and the sales executive might just be asking for more computers with faster internet services. Social media expands communication opportunities and responsibilities. Businesses are working hard to engage their customers in dialogue and conversations. For example, in the adjacent screenshot, we can see McCain Foods' Chief Growth and Strategy Officer is talking with the people about several improvements in the company. Businesses are trying to create a community of customers who communicate about their brands to increase product awareness. For example, in the adjacent screenshot, we can see that OnePlus's Instagram page has over 3.5 million followers, a community large enough to spread word of mouth about the company's various products. Now that we know what challenges we are going to face, let us see what characteristics do successful business communicators share. Remember, effective business communicators are strategic, professional, and adaptable. Let's discuss these traits further. Effective communicators are strategic. They plan what and how to communicate to ensure that the message achieves its purpose. Remember always that the message has to be purposeful, audience-oriented, and persuasive. Let us look at two emails, one ineffective and the other effective. This email is not very effective, the reasons for which we are soon going to discuss. Let us look at our effective email and why so. At the very start, we can see that this email is addressed to a specific person rather than to the department, making it more likely of acquiring a response. It also uses a formal opening, "Dear Professor Smith," which is appropriate for an initial email to someone who doesn't know to sender. The email also has a clear subject which alerts the reader to the purpose of the email in the subject line, which will capture the reader's attention. The point of the email is also addressed quickly in the first paragraph instead of making the reader going through much more detail. The sender also groups information effectively into paragraphs, so it is easier to read and also keeps the sentences relatively short. The email asks a very specific question, making it easier for the recipient to answer. By contrast, the ineffective version requires the person receiving the email first locate the appropriate faculty member and then forward the email. When that faculty member gets the email, what should they do? Good communicators understand that their message must target a specific audience, what the audience needs and wants, and then how to compose a comprehensive and persuasive message to address those needs and wants. Again, let's have a look at an ineffective email and discuss why it is so. Here is an effective email. It is effective for many reasons. The subject line identifies the purpose of the message. The recommendation is easy to find. There are multiple headings that outline the organization. These headings are subgrouped by various bullet lists with reasons and next steps. The content provides actual information the audience needs in a format that is easily decipherable by them. Good communicators can persuade others to influence their audience to agree with their point of view, recommendation, or request. Effective communicators are professional. They can project a business-like image by being an active listener, being appropriate to the situation, by being clear and concise, and by being ethical. Active listening is a simple, yet challenging process. First, we need to hear accurately. For maximum accuracy, we have to focus on sound, removing physical barriers and reducing distractions. Then we need to comprehend and interpret the message. We need to develop emphatic skills, pay attention to nonverbal signals, and ask questions and paraphrase. We then need to evaluate. To assess fully, we need to remain open-minded, take our time, consider the matter's credibility and use logic over emotion. We then need to respond accordingly. We need to be precise, being aware of our nonverbals, like expressions and gestures, understanding our preferred outcome, and using a professional tone. Professionalism in writing and speaking requires etiquette and respect without being overly formal. Etiquette errors can become barriers that interfere with your audience's perception of you. So how can we be clear and concise? First, we need to understand the meaning of the two words. Clarity is the quality of being unambiguous and easy to understand. Conciseness means using no more words than necessary for a message to accomplish its purpose. Here are two voicemail messages illustrating different levels of professionalism. As we can see, the effective version of the voicemail is much more precise and short. It references exact timings and gives the recipient alternatives as to what they can do following the message. Ethics are principles you use to guide decision-making, leading you to do the right thing. Here we can see the founder and CEO of Amazon, Jeff Bezos, humbly talking to the audience and apologizing for a particular incident of them mishandling some illegal copies of books. This shows how he is acting according to his ethics, making decisions that he feels are right. Failing to share vital information is a poor ethical choice. In this example, we can see A particular, Sheila Sykes, a newly hired management assistant, has failed to share important details to some very important information. It is advisable to not be this person. As technology options and challenges change, business communicators must continually address three issues. What is the best technology for the task? How can I use technology to enable more effective communication? How can I avoid the technology traps that get in my way? As technology options and challenges change, business communicators must continually address three issues. What is the best technology for the task? How can I use technology to enable more effective communication? How can I avoid the technology traps that get in my way? Culture is the learned and shared patterns in a society. Effective communicators are easily able to work with other cultures. Collaboration means to work together to achieve a common goal. Effective communicators can adapt to the working style of many different people. They can coordinate, compromise, negotiate, and also manage conflict. So let's summarize what we learned today. Effective business communicators always have a competitive edge in the workplace. Business communication is complex and barriers, context, and multiple audiences add to its complexity. Successful business communicators are strategic, they are professional, and easily adaptable. The goal of this course is to teach you the skills and insight you will need to make good business communication decisions.